All right, very good. And David, I was curious because in a lot of the work that I see, both even our own, in fact, we sort of tend to fall into the trap of, or I think at least it's potentially a trap of trying to sort of separate the public sector from the private sector and sort of treating it very differently and saying it's got to be different because it's the public sector. And yet when we look at it maybe from the specific environment context, I'd agree with that sort of approach and maybe some of the implementation considerations and what have you. But when we're looking at the impact side of things, do you fundamentally think the public sector is so different to the private sector and what it's trying to achieve through cloud?
Listening to the factors that the other three have listed, they're no different to the factors that I would be listing from when I'm looking at a proposition from a government perspective. In terms of, so therefore the idea that there's something fundamentally different, I honestly don't believe there is a perception of that, but I don't necessarily think it holds true. If you then turn around and say, well, is New York Stock Exchange operating in nanoseconds equivalent to some of the government departments? And the answer is no, because they've got a fundamental different business tempo and requirement. From that perspective, you could end up with a different technological baseline. From where I'm working at the moment, in the criminal justice arena, and this isn't necessarily the most high-tech demand, but we'll be removing paper from the core of the system by April. That's the aspiration. It's kind of not nanosecond operations, to be honest, but fundamentally, in terms of where do we go, how do we apply information, what do we do about the security wrap around it, what is in the public domain, what isn't, when does it get to the public domain, when doesn't it? Those type of questions I think are applicable to whatever business you're in. If you're trying to conduct e-commerce, you have to look at the fraud environment to work out that there are considerations beyond just the cheapest, just ram it up there, hope it all works, and let's get on with it.
Yeah.
But no, I don't believe there's a fundamental difference in the factors that you consider. Come back to performance, time and cost, and however you wrap that up.
Good. I find myself validated. All right. And Joe, just thinking about some other work that I've seen. Again, there's a lot of talk about what the impact is on the prevalence, the uptake, the popularity, whatever you want to call it, of cloud, given the economic times. Now, to be honest, we do ourselves a lot of research on a global basis, and the findings can sometimes seem contradictory in the sense that some people avidly say, absolutely, when times are tough, these sorts of things become really popular. Other times it's actually the opposite effect, and for some people it seems not to make one bit of difference. So in your experience, given the fact that as a vendor you work with a lot of, sort of partners and customers, what do you see as the prevailing trend, if there is one?
Well, I think, as you say, in a down market, people will do a few things. Certain people will just try and maintain business as usual and hunker down and try and see it through. Other people will look at it as an opportunity to evaluate the cost in their business and try to work out where to get rid of any excess cost. I mean, we just announced our Q4 results yesterday, and they are dramatically up. Okay. So
that is marketing.
So
that is marketing.
Well, kind of, but they are. It's 32. But
is that virtual or real?
Real money.
It's real profit.
Real money.
I come from banking, so
not the virtual money your exchange pushes around. This is the real stuff. And we were discussing this actually, because someone asked me at breakfast the same question, how's things at VMware? And it comes down to the fact that when you've got something like virtualization, for example, which is you save money doing it, it's pretty obvious doing that, then people will spend money on it. I think the challenge we've got is that the industry has used cloud as the let's paint everything with the word cloud. I've seen companies that had products 3 years ago launching the same product now with the word cloud in it and trying to make it look the same and trying to get on the agenda without understanding what that actually means to people. So I think those companies that are hunkering down are the ones that are going to be losing out in 2 to 3 years' time, because they're going to have the same cost base, and what they're going to find is that their competitors have outmaneuvered them. Right. And their competitors have cut cost, and at the same time innovated with technology and discovered new and interesting ways to deliver things. So I think people, and the challenge also is we talk about this concept of business agility. And people always talk about business agility. It's actually a pet area of mine that I'm trying to get an answer to as to what business agility actually means to different people, because it's kind of interesting. It's a great conversation topic. And most people, when they talk about cloud, they go, it's a fantastic way to save money. It's a fantastic way to pay as I go, to only pay for what I use, etc., etc. And that's what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. If you then suddenly look at it and say, well, actually, I'm going to look at it as a game changer, then it's a whole different conversation. So I know there's a couple of examples. One is a particular bank that in 2008, you might remember, there was a small financial problem, and Lehman Brothers disappeared overnight. And what happened was, if you're a trading bank at that time, the next day, there's going to be all of Lehman Brothers trades available for you to take and do on your trading platform. At the same time as we know, and as NYSE know, in a down market, trading goes up as people start betting against things. So you're sat there as a trading bank, and suddenly you're looking at the market, the potential. Most people had built their 20% capacity into their systems. That was what you did. That's your standard rule of thumb, 20% capacity, let's build that in. Another company had already started doing early cloud stuff, and what they were able to do overnight was repurpose a whole bunch of hardware that was previously doing Monte Carlo simulations and other things, and bring that into their core trading platform, which they built in a way to scale to do that. And were able to scale their trading platform about 2.5 times. And they took the lion's share of trades the next day, and they are now one of the dominant trading banks as a result of taking advantage of that market opportunity that you couldn't have predicted. But that's the kind of business agility and innovation by IT that can change the business that people get excited about by cloud, and that's the kind of cloud stories that the CIOs are hearing when they're wandering around outside with their friends playing golf. And I think that's the pressure that people are under. It's not just how do we save cost, it's more how do we do something different and innovate and take advantage of this. And the government's doing that as well. As, G-Cloud's not necessarily all about saving cost. In a lot of ways it is, but in many ways it's about how do we do shared services and how do we do things better. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Okay, and I think that's a good point at which to pick up the other item that I had sort of as a must-have ask of you guys. Whether we talk about it from a pure cost perspective or from a value-add agility perspective, my feeling again is that the application or implementation or utility of cloud, in which way it manifests itself, even in these cases where it's being looked at as a specific vertically oriented application, it requires, beyond implementation, embedding of some form of change. Certain things need to change around the application of cloud, and that does need to manifest itself at a people, process, organization level. At least that's what I believe. Now, that to me sort of translates into the requirement for the CIO function to collaborate very effectively with the other functional entities that make up whatever organization you work with. And I'm curious to know, based on your own experiences, how that sort of process has been within your own environment, and what kind of challenges you faced in bringing other people from sales, from marketing, from operations into the whole cloud sort of concept discussion and business reality. So if we can start with Ian.
I guess there's two aspects there, people and process. So my initial reaction around people is that it should be, for end users, it should be seamless. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest challenge is more from a technology perspective. So for systems administrators, how can they have if you had an example of a hybrid cloud where you can, to use the point previously around, the elasticity, you can flex up and down at will. You've got a hybrid cloud, how can you build a agnostic picture of, your internal cloud merged with the external cloud? And those tools at the moment don't exist. So how can we get to a picture in terms of process and people where there's one, dashboard of the infrastructure? How can we do the correct things around, the complexity of the tools and the vendor? So I think there's a lot more to do with, training the technology staff, and also bringing, our partners on that journey to make sure there's, a single set of tools that present and paint a single picture, unified picture of our cloud infrastructure.
Okay.